Chef Mark Henry is a culinary entrepreneur. Mark moved to the United States from Jamaica in 1995 and completed his culinary training at the Culinary Institute of America in 1999. Noticing a lack of gourmet sausages and always dreaming of a business of his own, Mark started Island Bwoy Cuisine. Since 2012, Island Bwoy Cuisine has grown their product offering to include a variety of sausages, meat products, seasonings, and sauces. And now I will turn things over to today's presenter, Chef Mark Henry of Island Bwoy Cuisine. Chef Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today as we highlight food from the Caribbean. Today, we're going to be focusing on 3 ingredients. Those are coconut, ginger, and pineapple. To start out, we're going to be making a coconut rice. Not like the rice and peas that you're used to, but something a little bit different. Stay tuned as we proceed. Hopefully you'll enjoy. So to start out, we're going to have our pot here, and what we're going to do is parch our rice. We're using long grain rice to begin with. So we get our flames going, and you want to start out your pot on a cold, you want to start cooking on a cold heat and gradually warm up. So we put our oil in the pan, and then we add our rice. Today I'm going to be using jasmine rice, but you can use long grain or any other rice that you want, so something like basmati. Be mindful that you'll have to adjust the amount of liquid that you add to it, okay? So to our oil, we're adding our rice, and I pre-washed my rice, and that is something you want to do, especially if it's high in starch. If you do not wash your rice, what will result more often than not is that you get a starchy, sticky end result. So once our rice is in the pan with the oil, we let it toast, or what we call parching in Jamaica. And this is like almost making rice cereal or Rice Krispie, where the rice grain begins to swell and get a smoky aroma to it. So once that is going, you want to keep moving your rice around. And we'll show the camera what it looks like when we put it in, and just keep moving it around. You will know how you're doing by smell. One good thing about cooking is that it engages the senses. And, hopefully we don't set the fire alarm off today, but we're in for some real nice aroma. As things start to progress, you'll hear the rice crackling in the bottom of the pan, and you just want to keep moving that around.
Chef Mark, how do you pick which kind of rice you use for which recipe?
I don't have any special preference. I like jasmine because of the aroma. And I've gotten used to cooking it over the years. One of the things I try to stay away from is parboiled rice. I just feel like it doesn't have the characteristics of rice. With jasmine rice, if you just add salt and water, you have a pretty flavorful rice. But with par-cooked rice, I don't get that sense. Depending on the type of meal that I'm doing, if I'm doing something like East Asian, Indian, I'll work with basmati rice. And usually what I try to do is go to our small supermarket, ethnic supermarket, because they have some good varieties there. And like I said earlier, usually when you get rice, you want to wash it. And you can tell when you first start washing it, the water will look kind of milky. So by adding water and rinsing it and pouring it off, what happens is that the starch, you start taking off the starch, and that's very helpful to your end result. There are many ways to cook rice, of course. Usually we know of the 2-to-1 ratio. That is 2 parts water to 1 part rice. And what will happen is that you'll see that the rice starts to clump. I don't know if you can get a good vision on it there, but as it starts to change in color, then I'll add my garlic. And then we continue the process of waiting for the aroma of the garlic to come up. So what you'll do is rinse your rice repeatedly. So you put your first batch of water on there, you move it around in the pot or pan, and you see it turns milky, you pour that off, and you continue the process until the water is clear. So our rice is toasted real good right now. At this point, what we're going to do is add our coconut milk and water. For our purposes, I combine the two. And what you can see here is that the milk solids, the coconut milk, the fat from the coconut milk is on the top. So we'll pour that in and let it start doing its thing. So what we want to do at this point is bring it to a boil. Once we bring it to a boil, you know the liquid is hot enough to continue the cooking process. If your liquid doesn't come to a boil, what happens is that the rice is going to get soggy, and it's going to try and absorb all of that water, and your end result will be a sticky rice. Another way of cooking rice that I will use commonly is if I start out and I have too much water in there, is bring it to a boil rapidly, and then use a strainer and strain off the liquid, put it back on the stove, and let it steam. So what happens is that excess moisture that is in there, turn it down to generate steam and self-cook the rice. There are other ways you can cook rice by also putting it in the oven covered after you bring it to a boil again. So, of course, we have to add a little salt to our rice, and you want to salt to taste. Now, typically what I would do is stick my hand in there and taste it. I won't do that. I won't encourage it because unlike you, I'm used to the heat. You might not be used to it, so we don't want any third-degree burns or anybody going to the hospital and you say, oh, Island Boy did it. No trickery here. Just old-fashioned, used to time and again. So our rice is going, and as you can see, it's boiling a little bit. So we're gonna stir it one more time, and then we're gonna put it on the stove behind me and let it go for about 20 minutes. At that point, on low, extremely low. At that point, the rice will continue to fluff and absorb the rest of the liquid and cook through. Okay? So let's do that now. All right. The next thing I'm going to get to is our jerk butter. So jerk butter we're going to be using on our vegetables today. We're going to be doing some carrots and green beans. This was one of my mom's favorite to make for us, but I added a little twist to it. In my earlier series, I did chayote. That was something that you would add to the combination of the carrots and the green beans to bump up the vegetables. And then she'd do like a sweet, salty flavor to it where she'd add garlic and salt and granulated sugar. So you had that flavor where you had that umami feeling and your mouth is just pulsating with the different flavors that come with it. Today we're going to be making Island Boy Cuisine jerk butter. So this has become one of my favorite go-to in that you can add it to anything. I put it on bread and put it in the oven or put it on the grill. It's a change from your regular herb butter that is out there, traditional herb butter. So if you get a chance, you should order a jar of this on islandboycuisine.com and try to experiment and come up with your own flavors. So bump up the seasoning in your life. So what I got here is a half pound of butter. And to that, we're going to add a little acid. I'm using salted butter, so that way I don't need to add additional salt. I use the juice of a half a lime, and I use lime intentionally. Lime is very common in Jamaica. It has a sweetish undertone, to a sour exterior. So the sourness gets you first, but behind that sour, there's a little bit of sweetness that kind of keeps you coming back. So we have our half a lime, and we're going to do about a half a tablespoon, so 1.5 teaspoons of jerk butter.
We don't expect you to reveal all your secret ingredients to us, but what are some of the common herbs and spices you'd likely find in a jerk seasoning?
Not revealing any secrets, but jerk typically has to have pimento, which is the allspice berry in Jamaica, garlic, ginger, and onion or chives, and thyme, fresh thyme. Those ingredients are very important. To a lesser extent, cinnamon is also added to it, but the cinnamon is way in the back, so you don't get that pronounced flavor coming through of it, but it complements the other herbs and spices in there that lends to jerk having its unique taste. I think I said it on the previous show, but whenever we make jerk seasoning, true jerk seasoning typically is just a herb paste, a combination of herbs and spices. So you don't typically find citrus in there. You don't find acid like vinegar. Of course, I left out one of the most important part, the Scotch bonnet pepper. Scotch bonnet pepper is naturally a preservative on its own. So that will help with the curing process and also gives a unique taste to it. Like I was saying earlier with lime, where you have that sweet undertone, so it is with Scotch bonnet pepper. If you cut a Scotch bonnet pepper and you smell it, you'll get the flavonoids, the spiciness coming from it, but you'll also get a hint of sweetness to it. That is kind of reminiscent of bell peppers, sweet bell peppers. So make sure that when you're making this, you can, of course, put it in a blender or a food processor to make it, or you can just make it by hand. You want to make sure that your butter is extremely soft, so leave it at room temperature. That way it will make the mixing or the blending process much easier. So here we have our jerk butter, and we have the juice of the lime is all absorbed, and it's very malleable. Now with this, the good thing about it is that, like I said, you want to add, this is like adding icing to a cake. You know, it only helps to accentuate the flavors, brings out whatever other undertones are there, characteristics of the food is going to bloom, and you get that nice umami feeling. You're going to salivate and get that ooey-gooey feeling.
Chef Mark, we're just checking against the ingredients that we have in our recipes, and it looks like in our recipe list you used a pound of butter, a tablespoon of seasoning, and the juice of half a lime.
Correct.
But this was half a pound of butter, half a tablespoon, and still the half of a lime. So is there just some flexibility there for folks? There
is flexibility. With cooking, it's unlike baking. You're not doing sciences involved, but it's not as rigorous as it is in baking. So it's good to, you can add a little bit, and you might not I've seen it on the camera, but a little bit of my lime juice came out on the counter. Hence, I'm wiping it up. I wiped it up. So it will only help with your butter. The butter is a fat, so by the time to work in that lime juice, it takes a little bit of working. So it's here or there, and you can taste it. And some people will want to add more, or some people will add less.
And can you freeze this butter once it's mixed to use later?
Most definitely. Actually, I have some in the freezer right now. So I make up a pound of it, I put it on wax paper, roll it into a tube, or you could easily just put it in a plastic bag or trays, freeze them and portion them out. And whenever you're ready, you just take a dollop or a little piece and go to town on it.
Great, thank you.
All right. So the butter that I made is going to be going with our vegetables today. And I have, for the camera, we have green beans, and we have an assortment of variety of carrots. Okay? You said julienne, large julienne. In the trade, we call them bâtonnets, and they're usually about a 1/4 inch by about 2 inch in length. Usually we go bigger than that. You'll find more preciseness as far as the culinary cuts are concerned in Europe. In the US, we like to go big and bold. So for us, a bâtonnet is a little bit sturdier. So for us to get our vegetables started, and we're gonna kind of slow up on it as we go, we're gonna need our saute pan and use a cover with it. So to our pan, we're gonna add water, just a little bit of water to cover the bottom of the pan. And what that's going to do is generate some steam and help to blanch your vegetables, okay? We want a nice crunch to them, so we don't want to cook it too long. We don't want to have we don't want them soggy either. So, and you can use whatever type of carrots you want. Here like I said, we have the red ones, the yellow ones, a little bit of parsnip, and the green beans. So we're just going to throw those all in there and cover it and let it go. You can add salt to your vegetables as you cook them if you want. Being conscious about our salt intake is always good. That's why we use alternatives like juices of lime, or we can use some sort of acid to help to bring out the flavor of the food that or enhance the flavor of the food that we're cooking.
Chef Mark, it's like you were reading the minds of our commenters. So somebody representing the Caribbean Foodways Alliance has a question and is interested in learning more about your low sodium alternatives and options.
Right. Well, you can actually, it's real simple, real easy. Instead of, you can reduce your salt by adding more food with acids. So you can use vinegars like a cane vinegar or apple cider vinegar. If you're going to be using sherry vinegar, you want to use as little as possible, because what happens is that has a biting taste to it. Okay, while the others promote more of a subtleness where it's not biting. The acidity level is not as strong or as raw as say a sherry vinegar versus red wine vinegar. Another thing that is great too is using limes, lemon. You can use citrus, like ugly fruits. You want something with more tartness to it than anything. And the best time to use those ingredients is towards the end of the cooking process. Because what happens is that causes the food to kind of bloom at the last minute. You can also, herbs do work very well at doing that too. So you'll see that when in Jamaican cooking in particular, whenever they cook, whenever they're making stews, like 15 minutes before they take that stew off the pot and it's simmering down, it's cooking with a lazy bubble. They'll add like their herbs. They'll use their thyme, they'll use their scallion, their onion. They'll even use the Scotch bonnet pepper too. And depending on what you're doing, will determine whether you cut the product or not. With the Scotch bonnet pepper, you don't want to cut it if you're using a large amount of it. If you want to just draw the sweetness from it, you keep it whole. If you want heat, then you can slice it and add it. But if you want that subtleness of the smell of it, then you want to put it in whole. So here our product is, our vegetables have been bubbling and steaming a little bit, and we want that liquid to practically evaporate before we add our honey and butter. So to that, I'm adding about a tablespoon of our butter, jerk butter, and then I'm gonna add like a teaspoon of honey, okay? And then I'm just gonna cover that and let it go to town. And again, I'm gonna put that on my stove in the back to let it kind of simmer and, get all that ooey gooiness. Okay. So, not necessarily, but what some people consider the star of the show, we're going to get started on our curry shrimp. Again, like I said earlier, where we were doing our rice, we want to start out with a cold pot or a cold pan. In our case, one of the reasons for that is because unlike other curries where we're doing like chicken or goat, which are most popular in Jamaica, and beef to a lesser extent, the shrimp or seafood takes much less time. So what we actually do is make the sauce most of the way, and then we finish the dish by adding the seafood. So typically the seafood is going to take about anywhere from 7 to 12 minutes to do, depending on the size of the ingredients or how they're cut and what you're using. For our case, our purposes today, we're going to be using shrimp. Okay, so let me get rid of some of this product here, and then we'll get started on that. Okay. I went to my local ethnic store yesterday. They didn't have any of the big boys, so I got some small shrimp. These had just come in and they look fresh, so I decided to go with them. That also determines how long we cook them too. The larger the shrimp, the little more time it will take, and it will be a little bit more chewy. So you got to be very mindful of that. We have our scallions, our pepper, our curry powder, our garlic, ginger, fresh thyme, and our jerk seasoning. So let me take a look at how we're doing here. Yeah. So to get us started, what we're going to do is we're going to put our oil in our pan and get that going. Again, we want to start out with a cold pan because what we're going to be doing is burning or blooming our curry to release some of the aromas from it. Now, if you're cooking Jamaican curry, you got to make sure you get Jamaican curry. There are a lot of curries out there in the supermarkets, and they're all different. They're all different in many ways. Jamaican curry is distinct in its aroma. It has a strong, pungent odor that is kind of pleasing, but it's definitely different from Indian curry. Even a Trinidadian curry is different. They have more garam masala and other herbs or spices that they'll put in there. In Jamaican curry, you don't find garam masala. You'll find turmeric, you'll find cayenne, you'll find allspice berries, commonly referred to as pimento in Jamaican cooking. So we put our oil in, then we're going to add our curry powder and our jerk seasoning. So you put that into the pan with the oil, and you let the oil kind of burn or char the curry. And you'll know you want to cook this dish, start it out low and keep it as low as much as possible. All right? So you can hardly see it there, but the curry is cooking in there. with the jerk seasoning. We're blooming the flavors. And then once that starts to bubble, you're using your senses. You're going to add your garlic and your ginger. Now, in my recipe, I call for julienne, fine cut ginger. And I did this intentionally because some people don't like it, ginger in there. So this way they can pick around it. But with your ginger, that's also going to bring another element to your spice. So we add a little bit of our ginger julienne and let that go. Then we're going to add our peppers. And guys, when you get your shrimp, if you peel them, keep the shells, use them to make a stock. They add great flavor to your dishes. Okay, so while that is going, then we're going to add our coconut milk. So what I have here is a can of coconut milk. They usually come in about 13 and a half ounces. You add that, and coconut milk varies from company to company, from production to production. So you'll find some coconut milk that are very thick in consistency, and you'll find others that are watery. You want to let that come to, you're not gonna see that one too well, but you're gonna let that come to a boil and then turn it down and let it simmer for all the flavors to come together. And what we're doing is building the flavors as we go. So as it continues to cook, don't be bashful. If you see that your liquid is too thick or reduced too much, go ahead and add some water to it. That will be very helpful.
Chef Mark, some of the recipes specify which type of oil to use and others don't. Can you talk about what kind of oil you're using today and how you made that decision?
I'm using coconut oil. It's a personal favorite. I use either coconut, avocado, or extra virgin olive oil. Because of what I'm doing today, they work best. I like using them with it. It harkens back to how we grew up because people couldn't afford to buy commercially produced oil. So people at home would actually boil their own coconut oil. Coconut was abundant in Jamaica. So this is my homage back to my country and to my mom in particular. So it wasn't often that we made coconut oil, but she did do it from time to time. And it was an experience that I enjoyed.
And for the peppers that you added, were those just bell peppers or was that including any other kind of pepper?
I'm using bell peppers today. I have some green and some yellow peppers. You can throw red peppers in there. You don't want any spicy hot pepper to go with this because the jerk seasoning and the curry itself, I'm actually using a hot curry powder. Jamaican curry comes in two flavors. It's either mild or spicy. And I like to use the hot one. So I'm using that and I backed it up with a little bit of the jerk seasoning. So while that is going, I'm going to check on my rice, see how she's doing. Right. So our rice is there looking good. And to that, what we're going to do is add some fresh parsley, with chopped parsley, and then I'm going to zest some limes in there. So what this does is the oils from the lime rind help it complements the coconut and brings out a unique taste, something different from just plain rice or rice pilaf. So I have the zest of the lime in there. And then we just mix that in. gives it a nice, pretty color, the contrast, and the aroma that comes from it with the oil from the lime takes it to another level. You can smell the coconut coming through, playing with the other herbs in there. Okay. So our sauce has been simmering for a little bit, and it's not too thick, so I don't need to add any liquid to that. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is kind of put this aside, and we're going to talk about our drink. Okay. Here, get this out. Any more questions? All right. So what we have here is a pineapple. This is a gold pineapple. And in Jamaica, we epitomize the use of using the whole plant itself. So what we typically do is you'll find this on the street side during the summer peak season, and you can get a pineapple peel and you eat it on the road. But for those people that like to take it home, what they will do is utilize the whole product. So what we will do is we will just peel it like we normally would. Of course, this part of the pineapple, you can peel off the stem of it. And what will happen is that you can plant it and get another product from it. So people just take this, put it in a jar with some water and let it sprout on its own and then plant it. Some people who are luckier than others will just throw it in the backyard and it takes root. So for a drink, what we do is cut off the bottom, the top of the plant. All of this is all usable. So to one pineapple, you'll use about 4 ounces of ginger root. You want to make sure that when you get your pineapple, you wash it. I washed this one earlier. You want to make sure you wash it thoroughly. Some people have food brushes at home. If you don't, it's a good thing to have. And basically, what they do is the skin or the rind of the pineapple is what they will save to make their drink. This drink can be had as some people have it like a tea, where they will drink it in the evening. They'll add other stuff to it, a little alcohol. So it's more of a aperitif or digestif after they finish their dinner. And basically, this is all it is. You put that in a large pot with water, and you boil it with ginger and clove. And you want to use the whole cloves. Don't know if the camera can pick this up very well, but you get them in your ethnic stores. The best place to buy spices is in their ethnic stores, because people go through that. They go through a lot of spices there. So in terms of freshness, your best bet is to go to the ethnic store and get it. So you boil this in a large pot of water. You use about 4 ounces of ginger, and on my recipe, I said 2 cloves, but you actually need more than that. You need about a teaspoon to 2 teaspoons of clove. They bring that to a boil with about 2.5 quart of water. Once it boils, you turn it off, you cover it and let it simmer and sit overnight. And what it does is that warm water will leach all the flavors out of the ginger and the clove spice. And to that, you can sweeten it however you choose. You can use sugar, agave, whatever your heart's desire. In some cases, people will put rice and it will ferment. So now I'm adding my shrimp to my sauce, and we are basically going to be done in a couple of minutes. We want to make sure our shrimp cooks through, and when your shrimp is cooked, it's going to form like a C. Now, the smaller the shrimp, the quicker it will cook. And while that is going, we're going to start getting ready to plate up. Okay.
Chef Mark, do you have a favorite sweetener for this kind of beverage that you rely on?
I'm a purist. I go with sugarcane, brown sugarcane, raw sugar. If I'm in a pinch, I'm going out to go get it. So otherwise, my wife will be tired of hearing me complain, you know? So I've learned, based on previous experience, don't say anything, just go out and get the sugar and do it right.
And you mentioned we needed a little more cloves. We'll go ahead and update the recipe. Did you say you think 2 teaspoons of clove or 1 teaspoon?
Pardon me? Say that again, please.
How much clove for this recipe? I'll update the recipe for us.
Okay. To this, I added a teaspoon of cloves.
Wonderful.
You can see our dish is coming along well. There, the shrimp is cooking. Practically done. Just keep turning it so that way I have 1.5 pounds of shrimp here. Now, at this point where it starts to thicken, I'm going to add a little bit we're going to finish the dish. And here we're going to add some fresh cut scallion and some fresh thyme leaves. All right. So we're looking good here. So we're ready to plate up. Let's get that going. Now, for me, my wife likes to eat in a bowl. I prefer mine on a plate when it comes to eating my stews, especially seafood stews, because I get a lot at one time. I try not to make a second trip, but I fool myself all the time. So for the wife, I'm going to do it in the bowl. So we have our rice. Okay. And what I did was I made sure that the heat on my vegetables was just enough to where the sauce, the steam that was built up in there, created a nice juice or texture to it, so it's kind of sticky, but at the same time flavorful, so all very saucy. And then we add our shrimp. Okay. All right. And 1.5 pounds, the shrimp is good enough for about a family of 3 or 1 hungry Jamaican. So here we have it. I don't know if the camera can pick it up real well. I'll try to. That's our curry shrimp with coconut rice and vegetables cooked with jerk butter.
Wow, that looks amazing. And I have to say, Chef Mark, you're also getting some love in the chat for your ooey gooey dance. So people are definitely here for the presentation.
If it's good food, I can't help myself.
Well, wonderful. So that concludes our presentation today.